will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, you guys ready? Got my shorts on.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic on which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All righty, let me get the agenda up. My neighbor's dog, I hope you don't hear him barking. And I wrote the dog ordinance, so I'm going to have to call him about that. All right. The next thing on the agenda is the modified agenda. We need a motion to add a 30-minute, executive session agenda following the board comments to review performance of a public employee. So we need to get a motion.
Motion to add an executive session to review for 30 minutes to review the performance of a public employee.
I second.
The first and second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next thing will be comments from staff and community. We got anybody, any comments? Nope. Don't hear any. All right, we'll move right into reports. The next thing will be with the finance report with Marcy Bannon.
This one is a prepared by, so if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No question for Marcy? All right. Next one, number 2, the budget report by Marcy Bannon. It's prepared by also?
It is the me report tonight. So I'm going to present really quick. Bonnie and I tested this out earlier, so I'm really hoping it works. Hey, so can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Great. Okay, so this is the first presentation to the board of our 2021 budget. I'm going to go through this. If you guys have questions, you can ask me during or at the end. It's up to you. It may be easier during. And then if I don't know the answers, I'll make sure to write it down and send you guys a response at a later date if I can't answer them right away.
Thank you.
So as you know, got to get to page 2. Oh, goodness. Of course, you know, you think you're going to have it working right, and then it stops working. It won't go off page 1. Well, that's unfortunate.
No, it's on page 2.
Oh, you know what? That's interesting. It's on both of my screens. Huh. One sec. Let me get to the right place. Maybe that's the problem.
As Marcy's preparing that screen, what I'd like to share is, as you know, there's a series of meetings that we will be having with the board to talk about the 2021 budget. But as you know, prior to the levy election, we are going to provide the board 3 possible budget scenarios. One with the levy passing, anything other than, fortunately, see the presentation that you have here tonight. But we also presented 2 other scenarios. One, if the levy failed, and we would have to undergo a reduction in force of our staff. And then the scenario 3 was a reduction in force of staff, but we would talk about a soft landing using the fund balance to reduce the number of RIFs in the event that the levy failed. So we had 3 budget scenarios. One, where the levy passed. 2, with a levy failure and a reduction in force. And then the third one with a levy failure and no reduction in force due to the fact that we would take money from the fund budget to offset those reductions in force. Fortunately, we're here this evening with what we believe is a balanced budget reflective of the apportionment and the funding that we anticipate based upon our student enrollment. So with that, Marcy, you can go ahead.
Okay, I apologize because I thought I had this down earlier and it's, no, Bonnie, we tried and seemed like it was gonna work. So I am going to present a screen. It's not gonna be as big as I hoped it would be. There you go. So you're gonna see my side stuff because, well, I can't make it seem to go away. So this is a presentation to the board of the first time about our budget. Our commitment to the district is ACT. We accountability, collaboration, and transparency. We're trying to be as transparent as we can with this report, so you guys have all the information you need when it comes time for the public hearing and the potential approval of our budget for the 2021 school year. During the budget process, we collaborate with many different groups of people. It's a superintendent, the executive directors, the chief officers, the principals of the schools, and we try to get as much information as we can during the budget process. The budget is an instrument in which it sets the financial plan to achieve our district goals for the upcoming year. In our current student ends and strategic goals, the budget falls under 2.2, which is develop and communicate a sustainable budget that supports our strategic goals. Some of this information you may remember hearing when Debbie Christensen did the Budget 101, so I'm going to go over it again, but if you have questions, let me know. And I apologize if you already know what I'm saying. So there are 6 different fund types in our school district, 5 of which we create budgets for, which are presented to the board for approval. The general fund budget is our main budget. You guys are going to hear mostly about that this meeting or this presentation, so I'm not going to go into it in depth. You know what the general fund is. ASB is our student fund. It is made up of our OHS, Ording High School, and Ording Middle School ASBs. We don't currently run ASBs at either of our elementary schools, so there's no budget for the elementary ASBs. The process at our middle schools and high schools for their budget is their executive board collects information from the students from activities, athletics clubs, and they combine all that information together and come up with a budget. They project out what they believe they're going to receive for revenue for school-wide type items like ASB cards, yearbooks, dances, and they put it all together and they approve their ASB budgets during an ASB executive meeting. It's noted in the minutes that it's approved. It goes to the principal for approval, and it comes to me for me to combine together and present to you during the budget process. Our next fund is debt service fund. Debt service fund is a little bit self-explanatory. It is used to pay debt. The revenue that comes in a debt service fund comes in from our voters. It was the debt was approved during a bond vote. And that's where the money came into, and the money is paid out of the debt service fund on a biannual basis for any outstanding debt we have on bonds. There's another portion of debt service fund for non-voted debt. And so this would be debt that the board has approved but did not go out to the voters for. We only have one source of non-voted debt this year. Everything else has been paid off, and that is for the energy project that happened somewhere back in, I believe, the 13-14 school year. So that's the only non-voted debt in that account. Capital projects is the one that we use to do large projects. So you guys all know mostly about the PTR portable project. That was paid for out of the capital projects fund. The only revenue that usually comes into capital projects is impact fees. The impact fee rate is set by Pierce County, and it is not based on the impact fees that we could collect as a school district if they'd let us collect what we actually need from each house that's built. The current rate at collection as of January of this year went up to $3,815 per house. The next fund is Transportation Vehicle Fund. This is for our buses. So this is the fund that is used to buy buses for the school district, and the money that comes in is from depreciation for those buses from a statewide depreciation schedule. The sixth account is Private Purpose Trust Fund. There is no budget comes to you for this. It is made up of, the fund is made up of scholarships, mostly for the high school, donations that have come from our public, from someone in our community that wants to donate to a specific scholarship that is then given out by our high school, or it is made up of also Invest Ed Funds, which is a company that donates matching dollars to districts to use for kids that can't afford things, such as maybe a kid can't pay for an ASB card. The Invest Ed Fund could be used to pay for that. So each fund has a budget. I just went over that a little bit. And then everything's combined together. And this is part of the transparency. We create a summary called a draft budget summary. And the draft budget summary, I will go through quickly later. You guys have it in the documents that I provided. And it's what's going to go out to the community in the next few weeks for their review and input. It's what it's trying to be as transparent as we can with our public of what we're spending our money on in the district. And it's our goal to try to be as user-friendly so that the regular person can understand what the budget is made up of, rather than needing to be me to understand what it really means.
Can I ask a
Of
quick
course.
question? I'm so
Yep.
sorry. I just
That's
know that if I don't ask it now, I'm going to forget to ask it later. And every time I hear you describe something, it settles with me a little bit more, and I'm understanding a little bit more. But when you talked about the capital projects fund and where the revenue comes from, that it comes from impact fees, is that only on new builds within Ording city limits? So at some point, aren't we pretty much capped out at being able to?
It's not city limits. It is our Ording School District area. So like right now, we probably, so you've heard about Tahali.
Yes.
So
Okay.
Tahali is not in Ording city limits, but it is in our Ording School District.
Okay.
So we will get impact fees of the amount of $3,815. Do I have that right? Yes. Per household and usually it's paid at the time of, so Tahali is approved by Pierce County. So when the building permit is issued, they've had to pay all their fees during that time. So that's when it's paid, and then Pierce County then gets it to us on a monthly basis.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Now let's go into the general fund budget. The general fund budget starts out with enrollment projections for the year. That's the biggest part of what funds our budget for estimating. For 2021, our estimated revenue was generated by the following students' FTE. So 2,605 for kids K-12, 8 kids in grades 9-12, the ALE program or alternative learning environment, 50 students in Running Start, approximately 200 students in CTE, which is career and technical ed, about 48 students that are in ages 3-5 special needs, and about 389 grades K-12 special needs. What is not included on this list anymore is we used to receive funding and pay out money for a birth to 3 special needs program. In some of the reports, you'll see that went away. The legislature decided that the funding for that and the expenditures would go through a separate source at the state level rather than at the school level. So we no longer are reporting any birth to 3 numbers, revenue, or expenditures. Our enrollment on a normal school year, our enrollment is figured out by rolling up our January enrollment numbers. We take the kids that are in kindergarten and we roll them to first grade, and then we roll first graders to second graders, and that's how we normally get our enrollment. Because of the economy and the situation we're currently in, we didn't use that this year. We actually used last year's budget enrollment, which resulted in 70 less FTE in our budgeted enrollment amount. Had we done it, we would have had about 827,000 more in revenue and 70 more students in that K-12 number. So it would have been a little bit higher, and our revenues would have been a little bit higher too. This is just a graph, an easy graph, so you can see what our enrollment has looked like over the last decade plus our current year. As you can see, we're pretty flat till 14-15 when the big the building started happening in Ording. And it leveled out a bit on 1819 and 1920, and you can see the slight dip into 2021 for our projected decrease in enrollment. Our CTE also started increasing around 12-13 and went up all the way to 16-17, and then has pretty much leveled off after that. Our running start kept increasing. 18-19 was the pinnacle of that, and that was the year we had our largest graduating class ever, so it kind of made sense that we had our largest running start at that point. And then we kind of leveled back down to the level of 17-18 for the next year. Our pre-kindergarten, which is our 3 to 5 year olds, that's been growing, and the previous to this year's numbers included that birth to 3 program. So part of the decrease in this enrollment is because of the loss of the birth to 3 program. So we're not really losing a lot of kids, but we are losing that program, which is a lower FT for this particular graph. Our special ed numbers have been growing steadily from 13-14, and they keep on going up. So as you can see by the graph. Any questions on any of those so far? Okay. The revenue, where does our revenue?
Sorry, I wasn't fast enough on the key.
No, you're fine, sorry. I'm just gonna cruise right along, so you're fine.
Sorry. If we were to put in the 0 to 3 kids back, would our enrollment in special ed, would it continue to decline, or would it make a difference?
So the birth to 5 age range that this graph represents would be more leveled out rather than decreasing.
Okay.
So it did go down a little bit in the 1920 school year for our birth to 5 kiddos from 18-19, but in 2021, we're projecting currently, Chris and his team have reached out to the preschool kid families, and we know almost all of those are coming back to the district, if not every single one of them. So
great. Okay.
We don't believe that we're going to be decreasing any further from what we were currently at before the shutdown.
Okay, thanks.
Revenue. Where's our money come from? Our biggest chunk of revenue, 65%, comes from our state apportionment. The state apportionment dollars are driven by that enrollment. The formulas that are built into the state funding model are built all by what they call the prototypical funding model. They have a set of factors by number of kids you have that determines how much money we're going to get for principals, for teachers, for classified staff, and what we won't get any money for them at all. So there's some benefit portions of that. There's some allocations. There's also some MSOC. And because local effort assistance is a state fund, it also is included in that number, even though it's mostly in apportionment. A little over 10% is under our levy, and as you know, our levy must be approved by our voters. Every 2 years is what we're currently doing. State categorical is about 17% of our 2021 budget, and that is things for like state funds for special ed, transportation, English language learners, learning assistants. Most of these categories or funds cannot be used on other funds. They must be spent for the purpose that they were given to us for. So should we get money for highly capable programs, we can't use highly capable money on a regular teaching class. It has to be on highly capable events. Federal funds are about just under 4% of our revenue. So that would be items like Title I, which is our learning program mostly for reading, Title II, which is mostly professional development, Title III, which is for English language learners at the federal level, and Title IV. Also, funds for them come for the money we get for free and reduced lunches and breakfasts from the government. And they're also can only be used for the program purpose that they are come in at. So we can't use them for anything we want. They need to be used for the program that they come in at. Our last section of revenue is fee programs, and that's for things such as the sale of lunches. So when a parent puts money in their kid's lunch account, it goes into what we call fee programs. Insurance recoveries, interest from investments, donations, all go into that category. The next is just a graph. So you can see in a graph form where the money comes from. The biggest chunk is general purpose, which is state apportionment. Any questions? Okay. I'm watching to see if anyone's reaching for their mouse. Doesn't look like it. Okay, expenditures. The expenditures of the school district can be separated in multiple different ways by different parts of the account code. This particular explanation is sorted out by the account code that sorts out the activity of the whole account code, the whole part of it. So our teaching expenses are about 70%. That would include teachers, hearing officers, health-related services, support for activities, instructionals. You can read what I have in there, but it goes towards all the teaching activities. The next section is maintenance and operations. So that would be our facilities, our grounds, our maintenance, cleaning, our custodial. Building administration is about 5%. This would include building principals and their offices. So the secretaries at the schools go into the building administration expenditure area in this example. Central administration would include business office, board expenditures, superintendent office, HR, all the ones that are a district-wide, a central office type thing. Also included in there, which is kind of odd, is the supervisors for food service, transportation, and for maintenance and operations. Those are not included in those categories. Why the state differentiates it that way, I can't explain, but I can tell you that the maintenance and operations, food service, and transportation don't actually include the supervisor of those categories. So food service is a little bit self-explanatory. It's about 2% of our overall expenditures. Transportation is about 4%, and then other programs, so like our insurance, technology, and if we're buying any vehicles that are not buses, is about 2%. This is a graph of what that looks like in a graph form. Pretty, I like the colors. I like trying to differentiate colors because it makes it more interesting to look at numbers that way. The next one, another way to separate out our expenditures is by the program part of the expenditure. So it's a different part of the account code structure. The most of our expenditures are for basic education. That's where the big part, that's everything that comes out of, that has to do with a student for receiving their basic education. Special ed is the next category. That would be the program 21. That's all those special needs students that they need a little bit of help. It's usually the costs for those students are determined by an individualized education plan. Okay, Chris, I got that right, good. And then that's determined because the IEP determines what services are needed and we need to pay for those students. So that goes into special education. CTE is the next big chunk of money that we have, and that is only grades 7 through 12, and it's specific classes that are career and technical at our middle school and high school. Support services are other activities that support the educational programs of the district. Health services, superintendent's office, board, utilities, insurance, food service, some other stuff. Our other service expenditure category on this one includes programs like Title I, II, III, things that don't fall in the other categories. And then the next one is, because I love graphs, is a graph of what that looks like in graph form, because I think it's important to see it in a way without just seeing numbers of how much of the pie really is. Basic education is a little over 50%. It's where most of it is. But support services or special ed is 23%. Sorry, I had that wrong. Let me correct myself. Support services are the supporting staff, all of us of the district, and those are 23%. Special ed is 16%. I said that wrong. I apologize. So this is what it looks like, the big parts of the graph. Another way, the third easiest way to break up the expenditures is what we call the object code. And that's how we figure out how much we're spending on district-wide on salaries or on other types of items. So the 2000 series for the district objects are all on certificated salaries. No matter what we're paying to a certificated staff member, it comes out of a 2000 series account when it's salary. 3000 is classified, and then the state lumps all the benefits for each set of the employees into the 4000 series. The 5000 series is for supplies and materials. 7,000 is for purchase services, 8 is for travel, and 9 is for capital outlay, which means that we have a single item that has a value of $5,000 or more, and it needs to be categorized that way. And the graph of what that looks like. Our certificated salaries are about 39% of our budget. Our classified salaries are about 18%, and our payroll and benefits, both of those are about 23% for our benefits and taxes. Our supplies and materials are about 6%. Our purchase services are about 13%. Our travel is 1%-ish, and our capital outlay doesn't even register, so it's under 1%. This budget includes approximately FTE-wise, categorized as 172 certificated FTE and 115 classified FTE. Another way to look at it is we spend about 82% of our budget, sorry, that says 81% of our budget on employees. Our employees are the biggest cost that we have, that's where it is, and about 19% of our budget on stuff. So employees and stuff is the big categories. Any questions? Because that's most of it before I hit into the 4-year budget overview. Nope, you're good? Okay. The 4-year budget. A couple years ago in the 2018 legislative session, they started requiring every school district to put out a 4-year budget. So part of the presentation and part of the draft budget summary is about our 4-year projections. What this is projecting out what our costs will be for 4 years and in each one of the budgets that we have to provide. And so I use some normal and usual for us increases for enrollment projection to start working on that analysis. So the first column you'll see is what is actual in our, what we're budgeting for 2021, and then using that data to create information for 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. Then this is the other part of the 4-year budget that has the beginning fund balances, what I expect from those expenditures that are associated with those student counts, what our revenue and expenditures would be for the next couple of years. And I use that for general fund. For capital projects, debt service fund, ASB, and transportation, I use more logical choices for most of those. For debt service fund, it's whatever our debt's going to be for the next couple of years for our revenue and our expenditures. For ASB, I use an average of what ASB normally is for our district, for our schools, and get the 4-year budget that way. Capital projects is a tough one because I can't predict how much building is going to happen in our district. So that is the best guess at what I think our revenues could be for the next couple of years. So that's how those are figured out. So this one's general fund, capital projects, and debt service. And the last page is ASB, and then transportation. Transportation I use for revenues. The state produces a modeling tool that extrapolates how much they say we're going to get for depreciation on a yearly basis by our current buses, our current fleet. This is how much we're going to get until it falls off the depreciation schedule. So that's what I use to create the transportation vehicle out years amounts and expect to spend all that money every year. And I think that is that presentation. The other thing I'm going to go over with you guys real quick is what we're going to give out to the public. So before I switch over to that, is there any questions on this? No?
Just a comment from me.
Yeah.
You've done a great job. I just want to thank you for that. And I also appreciate all the colors because it differentiates things easily for me to understand.
I like colors because numbers can be so boring to look at that I try to add colors as much as I can.
And just every presentation that you give just brings me a little more clarity. So I appreciate all of your knowledge.
Thank you.
Very
I
good
also
job, Marcy.
appreciate the quality of the report as well as the timeliness and the speed at which you answered all questions around it. So that builds a lot of confidence.
Thank you. I try, it's part of the transparency. I figure if I can give you an answer as quick as I can, then, you know, well, unless I'm a really good used car salesman, but I'm not, so.
Marcy, thank you.
You're welcome. So the next one, let's see if I can get it to come up. Of course not, that would be too easy. So I'm gonna switch over real quick to the other screen, where I believe I am. What happens when you have two computers and you have the wrong mouse in your hand? Okay, so this is the draft, this is the budget summary that is gonna go out to the public. We put it on our website. Tara communicates it out through Facebook. And at the end of it, there's an email address that anyone can give me comments through a budget input email. So draft budget summary, Ording School District for 2021. Table of contents talks about what a budget is, what year it's for, how it's determined, gives a phone number, and the email address for any public input that anyone wants to provide. Our current student ends and strategic goals, along with it being pointed out that 2.2 is part of that process. And then going into our norms and commitments led by our act. Explain what the budget is and try to explain in easy terms what each budget, what each fund is made up of for the public. So not everyone knows what is in my brain, and so I try to make it as easy for them as possible to understand what the purpose of each fund is. Then it goes into the budget summary for all funds in one area of what our beginning fund balance is in a summary level, what the expenditures expected for the year, what transfers are expected, and then what I'm calculating at our current ending fund balance for each of those funds are. We go into, basically this is the same information in a more condensed form and more years. So the page before was just the 2021 school year. This one goes back a couple of years. This was modified per George's request in a previous board meeting where he requested more years to be included on any summary. So I included a few more years in that to be able to compare better for our public. Then the enrollment, it's basically the same enrollment chart that you saw in the other one. It actually is the same chart with increasing up into the year. Talking about where our money comes from. Same categories I talked about on the other presentation. The same should be the same exact totals on the other presentation. Where does our money go? Talking about the activity of our district and where the most of our money goes, which is of course 70% mostly to teaching activities. Then here's the revenues. The next few pages are revenues of the school district sorted out by revenue categories. And again, in this one, I added a couple more years in for people who want to compare year over year what our revenues have looked like. So we have actual for 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19. And because we don't have actuals for 1920 yet, that is budget along with 2021 budget as well. So it keeps going and through all the different revenue choices we have for a couple pages. And then I tell about the big parts of our expenditures, and this is our programs, what our program expenditures are and what fits into each one of those programs. Or category, telling them what each parts of the program is, and then I go into the 5-year summaries of each one of those programs for them, so they can compare year after year what our expenditures have looked like in each one for each one of those programs. Awesomeness, sorry, this is a great one. So a few years ago, in about the 16-17 or 17-18 legislative session, they made it a requirement that in any budget presentation that we present to the board, we include what is called the MSOC disclosure requirement. MSOC is our material, supplies, and operating costs. what they require us to do is for our programs 01, which is basic ed, ALE, which is 02, dropout re-engagement, which we don't have yet, so there's no funds there yet, and district-wide support, which is program 97, that we present what revenues we're getting for MSOCs and what expenditures are occurring. In this category, you can see that we get an allocation from the state, from our revenue sources of just under $3.3 million. However, our current budget is expending about $4.2 million of that. So we're over revenues coming in for those categories about $9 million. This came about a few years ago when the legislature was concerned that the raises or the increased money they were giving school districts for MSOCs were not going to teacher salaries. So this was a requirement to prove that we were not taking that money and increasing teacher salaries, but we were actually spending the increased dollars on the stuff that it was intended for, which is MSOCs. So that's the purpose of this page. Then I give information about our 4-year budget projection, enrollment projection, and the expenditures, like I did in our presentation. And then we talk about property taxes. And just FYI, if you have the version that I sent that is presented in the board, I made a little error. These 2 years said 2018 and 19 instead of 2019 and 20. So there is a small little change because I put the wrong years on the other one. The one that will go out to the public will have it corrected like this. And this is our property taxes. So this is our property taxes for what was for 2019 and what is for 2020. And it's telling them that our taxable property value in Orting is about $1.7 billion, just under 1.8, and that the normal $200,000 house would cost about $916 per year for property taxes for Orting, and that's levy and bond. I also gave the information once the state added on the state tax. I wanted to make sure it was listed on here, and that's this last little section that tells that there's another category on their tax statement. However, it's not ours. It goes to the state. It does not necessarily go to the district. We hope that some of it's coming to us in our apportionment, but it does not come directly to the school district. So when that happened a couple of years ago, we added that statement. In case anyone reads this page, they know that information. The last page talks about our board of directors, our address, our superintendent, and says that the board encourages community to attend board meetings and please communicate with us. So this will be the item that will be posted on our district website. It will be communicated to the public, and I will look forward to hopefully being the year that I get feedback on it from the public. I think that's all I got for you guys. Any questions?
Well done. Well done.
Nicely done.
Thank you, Marcy. I feel like we need to give a prize to the community member with the best questions, or maybe the first one.
The first question. There's one community member that has asked me questions throughout the year on some years, but has never actually commented on the budget. So I have actually not gotten my first public comment while I've been in Orting yet. I'm hoping this is the year, though. This is going to be the year that I get a public comment.
You know, I'm going to volunteer right now that when you do get that, let me know. I will bring a gift card from Starbucks down so that can be presented.
I know, it's kind of exciting. I mean, I've done budgets in 2 districts now, and I can say in 7 years or 8 years of budgets, I have never gotten a public comment. So 5 years in Orting and 3 years in Franklin Pierce, nothing. I'm hoping this will be the year. People have more time on their hands since they're still at home. So maybe it'll be my year. I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to say, Marcy, another good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And you guys will hear most of this again, probably in a really more condensed version during the public hearing on August 13th. So it'll be presented again along with giving you guys any feedback I received from the public, or, you know, if anything changes by anything that I received from changes that are needed.
Great. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Job well done. We're going to move on to Chris. Is prepared by. You have any questions?
So one of the things that we brought up in the budget presentation was the dropout recovery or the re-engagement piece that we currently don't have. And one of the things that I want you to know is that the money flows through to the district and then onto the contractor, which we'll be working with, Graduation Alliance. And so I've been working with them for a couple years, kind of figuring out what we needed and who we needed for. There was a question from a school board member regarding how many kids this might impact. I'm thinking at this point, less than 10, but we don't know what the impact of the closure has been regarding re-engagement. So it may be even more than that. But it's for kids 16 and over for engagement, and their job is basically to do the child find. They call it child find, basically find the kids, and then re-engage them in school. If they end up coming back directly to Ording High School, we'll receive all the direct funding, not just the 8% for the kids that they work for. And so it kind of hits two things. They could come back to our school, or they could go to Graduation Alliance through their program.
Okay. So, Chris, just to make sure, because I appreciate you answering my question about this. So if they're completing the Graduation Alliance program, then getting that 8%, variable. But if they decide to re-enroll at a school or Ording Middle School, wherever they're at, then we would get the percent. So
we would get all of the funding at that point.
Okay.
So it wouldn't go. They're no longer in the program. They did so. For example, if they're in the program for a month and the kid decides to come back, they get the month's worth of funding, and then we grab the funding after they return to those schools.
Gotcha. But otherwise, it's just a pass through.
Pretty much, except for the indirects for the billing and for the collection of the attendance data.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Is that enough to support? Is there any like administrative load that we have to support with the program?
Yeah. So the administrative load, the first step, there's several first steps, but the first step is actually for our registrar at the high school to gather the names of the students who they basically disengaged over the last couple years. So there will be some there. Then we have to make sure that they're registered in the school district. So they have to be on our student counts. So that there's a load. If you're talking about load, that's part of that 8%. And then there's the monthly counts, and they'll submit to us their attendance through their program. And so there is a level of administrivia, and that's why the 8% comes through. Initially, there's a little bit of work setting that up, getting it into Cedars, making sure that all of the kids are into the student counts. The initial setup was probably the most. After that, it becomes more just collecting the information on a monthly basis so that we collect our funding so that we can pay the contract.
Okay. And I know this is a 3-year contract that automatically renews. So I'm just curious, at what point will the board get an opportunity to hear a little bit more about how the program's working, how many students we're serving?
Yeah. So I'd be more than happy to do it at any point. If we decide as a school board, or Tony says, hey, by the way, they'd like one every quarter. I think quarterly would be a good way to measure this, especially when it comes to re-engaging kids who haven't been in school. So I can absolutely provide a quarterly update, real quick update for the school board.
Yeah, quarterly or even annual, when we look at our graduation numbers or, just student success numbers. I don't want to add burden to this, but I'll just be curious. I really hope we're able to help a lot of students through it. And if it's 5 or 6, that matters. So
it does. Yeah.
Just as a side note to that, on the budget report I provide to the board each month, it will be listed as a line item, just like ALE currently is and our other grades. So if there is students, it will be on there.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
That's good.
At the board superintendent retreat on August 22, I plan to engage the board in a discussion on what are the special program reports you'd like to have during the year. And so we will map out all the programs that the board has special interest in that haven't been visited for some time that you'd like to know more about, so we can create a calendar for that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
Any other questions for Chris? Seeing none, we'll move back on to the consent agenda. Item 1 through 7. Do we have questions on the consent agenda? Somebody sent in some questions. Yeah, we need to get those questions out in the public.
I had one, and Bonnie helped me out. I just wasn't able to view a page, but then when I refreshed it, I was. So that was the only question I think that I saw for the consent agenda.
Any other
Thank you,
questions
Bonnie.
Thank you. Any other questions on the consent agenda? Item 1 through 7, can we get a motion?
I will move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
The first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. The next items are action items. Marcy, the fund transfer.
So as you all know, the capital project of the PTR 8-plex portable, also called Mega Portable, I call it both, whichever way you want to call it, the project's done. About a year ago, the board approved a transfer from general fund to capital projects to support the project because we didn't have enough impact fees to cover all the expenditures. Now that the project is completed, this is the request to the board to approve a resolution to take the excess transferred funds and move them back to general fund from capital projects. Any questions?
Seeing none, can we get a motion?
Motion to approve resolution number 8.2019-20 transfer fund to general fund.
I'll second.
The first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Fee schedule.
Is that done?
I'm not done yet. Almost. I'm so close. Had to talk for months, and then this is the meeting. So for this one is the fees and fines schedule and meal pricing for the 2021 school year. These are fees or fines that are associated with each of our schools. So from 5th grade camp to ASB cards to yearbooks. And then the meal costs, as you can see on the changes from 1920, the costs haven't changed. The fees have not changed. Ording Middle School added band polos because it's easier for them to do it this way than the way they've been doing it, which is, I believe, a parent purchase online program. So they want to do it through the school. So that is the fee schedule. And every year the fee schedule is brought to the board for approval as per board policy to approve for the following school year for the fines and fees. Mostly fees. It's a fee schedule. So any questions?
Seeing none, can we get, no questions? Can we get a motion to approve the 2021 fee and fine schedule that include meals and as prepared? Can we get a motion?
I'll move to approve the 2021 fees and fines schedule to include meal pricing as presented.
Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I'm really glad we were able to hold costs on those. I was proud of that when we made the changes before, and
Definitely.
Yep.
Hold the cost down.
good. Thank you.
Lynn, we get to hear from you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. It's garbled.
Okay, we get to hear from you about the certified staff approval.
Oh, about the yes. So,
Yeah.
are there any questions regarding our staffing?
Hearing none, we need a motion to approve it. Can we get a motion?
Motion to approve the conditional certificates for the listed teachers or listed instructors to be able to support our students.
Second?
With first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, it passed. Next item would be board comments. No comments?
Stanley, I have a comment or two I'd like to make, but I will be brief.
Go ahead.
As you know, the task force has met on 4 occasions, and we are just elated at the fact that the task force voted overwhelmingly to give us the green light to move forward, to now begin the very difficult and challenging work of addressing all the questions related to an AD rotation schedule, including our remote learning program. Both George and Kathy were on the committee, so if you have any direct questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to share them with you. But I'm also very happy about the fact that we are now moving into a task force number 2 that will consist of some members of the individual school leadership teams, as well as some parents that may be available to sit in on those meetings. We do know that there's a considerable amount of work that needs to be done. Not only do we have the state filing of our plan, but we also would like to present this information on the AD schedule and our remote learning to the board of directors on July 30th. So we have some rapid movement to make between now and then, and we're prepared to do that. I have reached out to Jenny McKinney and Jamie Jones as citizens on the task force, and I have nominated them to be the individuals that will prepare the report to the board of directors and make that recommendation from the task force. And they were very happy to serve in this capacity, and I'm just elated that they accepted. With that, I'm stand ready to answer any questions you may have, or you may direct them to George and Kathy.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for getting information out to the community. I pushed for that last week and this week and felt like I was kind of ornery about it, so I apologize for that. But the information I think has been well received, and people are appreciative of the survey. They still have lots of questions, but those answers will come after the survey, and they seem to be accepting that message. And so I just want to say thank you to the task force for this particular and monumental effort to come up with this recommendation, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final product later this month. And George and Kathy, thank you for that as well.
And I wanted to thank Tony and Steve and Chris and the other people that have been on it. It's been a really great opportunity for all of us to talk together and ask questions. And I think it's really helped us to feel like we're all working together at this really tough time.
Thank you, Kathy.
I would like to give a shout out to the students and the parents, the community members that were on the task force. I know we voted overwhelmingly to move forward with the suggestions. I don't think there was a single person on the task force that likes the suggestions, but it comes down to of bad choices brought on by the pandemic. How can we best serve our kids? And I think people, the parents and community members and the students, I think they at least got the impression, the sincere belief that the staff of the district has been working tirelessly to try to figure out how we can serve the kids as best as we can, given the constraints that we have.
Thank you, George. So that's all I have, Stanley.
Okay, thanks everyone. We're going to go ahead and move into the executive session. So you click off now and go back into the second link, and they will go in the executive session for about 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, Marcy.
Tell me, Bonnie, tell me if I don't turn it off right this time.
I will absolutely do that. No problem.